welcome back to the latest episode of the Master of None podcast. I am your host, as always, Stephen Murphy, joined by the regular rugby crew of Sam and Westy. This is a solemn podcast. We didn't really want to record this one, but look, we got plenty to talk about. Some Champions and Challenge Cup rugby on the weekend. Love a bit of European rugby where all the stars come into play. First of all, Sam, how are you?
Good, recovering from the disappointment of the weekend.
Yeah, it's like a bad hangover that won't go away.
Tough to take when like two of your three teams are playing far below par, and then one of them kind of gives you a little shed of light. Liverpool doing all right, and I'm going, okay, yeah, and then Hurricanes and Connacht just knock you back down to earth.
Yeah, Westy, you're a big soccer fan. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, great stuff altogether.
Sports, go sports.
No, let's just see Ireland, losing to Luxembourg and drawing with Qatar. I don't really follow too much else.
Westy did maintain for years that he was a Spurs fan because he had an Edgar Davids Spurs jersey. And every time I went into the Kingfisher when we were in NUI, I used to just see like some guy in an Edgar Davids jersey running on the treadmill. I was like, what's that chap doing?
Now, Edgar Davids was slick player though, to be fair to him. So
Westy was rocking them shades, I reckon, as well. Like,
yeah, it's fact. Yeah.
Under 13s.
I have an Edgar Davids. I have a Robbie Keane. I'm pretty sure I have one with my own name on the back of it as well.
Oh, wow, you are a big Spurs.
I was a big-time Spurs fan, yeah.
Why are we talking about soccer? This is not a soccer podcast. We move on. We have to talk.
Subject, man. I'm trying to get.
Sorry. Well, this is therapy, Sam. You got to face your fears, face your demons. So let's get into it. Connacht obviously played Leicester at the weekend. Unfortunately, lost 48 points to 32, which is it's a lot of points to ship. That's nearly 90 points in the last two games. Which, look, I'm no coach, but probably not what you set out to do start of the week. I put out on Twitter, some questions that you want us to answer. We'll get to them in a second, but let's talk about the positives first because we're positive guys. Well, Sam is definitely positive. Me and Westy maybe not as much, but I wore the Connacht jersey for support because the lads put a shift in, and we're not gonna abandon them. So let's start with the positives. First one that came to mind, lads. The jersey looked slick as always. Let's talk about that. It's a beautiful jersey, right?
It's a good black on black jersey.
Always. It was strange though because they were wearing the black jersey. So the other jersey is the European jersey, the kind of fluorescent-y one, and they were wearing the black jersey, and they clearly had European Cup tags ironed on over the Pro 14 tags. So I don't know what happened there with that jersey.
Because the European one wasn't very nice, that's why.
I think whenever the European one finally arrived in the sports ground and they went, ooh, maybe next year. So,
yeah. Well, the fact the black one's so lovely as well doesn't help. But that was a positive. I thought Sean O'Brien really stood up and had a great game. I don't think anyone's going to question that, right?
No, absolutely. I think he was good. And I think he's looked good anytime we've seen him the last couple of weeks. He's really put his hand up because you'd be worried about the amount of centres we have missing. Like Tom Daly at some point is going to need a break. Kind of thank God we didn't go through because there's a couple of weeks off before the Rainbow Cup, allow him to get some downtime. But with Bundy out suspended and Tom Farrell been out all season, Peter Robb's been out kind of in and out with a few injuries and stuff. Like we were down to bare bones, and him stepping up has been huge for us. And I could see him being more than just a bit part player next year.
Yeah, definitely. For someone still on an academy contract, very impressive. I thought Paul Boyle had a great game at 8, or as BT Sport commentators call him, Conor Oliver. They just kept mistaking the two all game, which they don't even look alike, but whatever. Do you know what's helpful for rugby players? They have different numbers on the back of their jerseys. So that's always helpful. It's not as if they're running around there with the same jerseys on the whole time.
I was so frustrated with the BT commentary because I thought it was terrible. Like I'm usually quite harsh on commentators because most commentary is crap. But they were so unknowledgeable about Connacht. Their entire basis of their knowledge was that Racing and Bristol games, that they were talking about things that just weren't relevant or weren't true at all. There was one point you made, Westy, yesterday when we were chatting. You were saying like how they commented that our line out is poor. And I was like, that's not true at all. Our defensive maul from after line out is definitely poor, but our line out is not poor at all. And then at one point they were stuck for something to do. So they made a Tom Daly, the diver joke, and then wouldn't stop making it for about 15 minutes. And it's just poor commentary. It's just not good. And I like that was frustrating to watch as well. So
I enjoy a good pun though. So I was I'm in on that one. Thought Kieran Marmy had a great game. Pulled off very early. I think he must have had a knock. I think we kind of agreed that in the WhatsApp chat because he was limping before halftime.
Yeah, it looked like that. His second try there in the corner. It looked like when he got up from that, he kind of hobbled to the next. I think didn't we have a penalty after that, and we had a scrum or something? I think he hobbled over. So yeah, I think I haven't heard an update, but it looked like it was an injury.
Start of the second half was actually very good because the first half really ended quite poorly and they couldn't get any momentum going. So to come out and score a try with Masterson, very quickly, that was a great response. So obviously, whatever was said at halftime had some sort of effect. And of course, like the last couple of weeks, we have seen with the ball in hand going forward, Connacht look, especially in patches, brilliant. They look really good. Like Caelan Blades, a little offload to set off Alex Wooten was incredible.
I thought Wooten was going to get himself a red card there because it looks like he elbows the man in the face when he's going through, and we know how that goes down recently. So
exactly. It's fair play to him.
Amazed that the try was awarded.
Yeah, I know. Well, we can talk about the refereeing in a bit as well. That was kind of my positives. If anybody wants to add any, they can. I mean, that jersey really did look good, though, right?
The jersey looked really good. Another big positive is how good Jasper Weisse was, because we were heavily linked with him last year and tried to get the contract over the line. So at least our scouting team are definitely doing work. Leicester pulled the rug from under us and got him ahead of us. But that's a positive, I think, in the long run in terms of our ability to identify unbelievable players that will absolutely slap us around the place. Guarantee if we don't sign Abraham Papali'i to another year contract at least, he'll be playing for Cardiff, or he'll be playing for Dragons, or he'll be playing for Zebre, and he will do it to us again. Like, because we can't defend against a big guy, and it's so true.
No. Poor Connor Fitz. I know, I know that he's just not the biggest lad in the world, but jeez, he got monstered by your man at the end there. Christ.
But the difference is funny though, because it's just his use of his power and his ability. He's only 4 kg heavier than Paul Boyle, and Paul Boyle is a good strong runner, like he is, but he's not as absolutely annihilating as Jasper Weisse. It's just the way that he runs. There's something about the way he can and CJ does it as well, the way they can kind of transfer their power into just absolutely dominating people. Like Boyle is more of it gets going and it's hard to stop. But that guy, you get him within 5 meters, he's not being stopped.
Can we get Jasper to pee in a cup? Is that too much to ask? I feel like after that performance, he needs to pee in a cup.
I feel like there's a cultural bias there towards South Africa.
I hate to be stereotypical, but there's in recent events, maybe he should pee in a cup. That's all I'm saying. We have to talk about the negatives, unfortunately, and the negative list is a lot longer than the positive list. We'll start obviously with the defensive maul. It's been an issue all year, and it doesn't seem to be improving. Westy, as I said before, our professional player on the panel. It seems to be, and this is someone who has played very little rugby in my life, but the first initial kind of stop is good, and then the attacking maul just seems to go around the corner, and Connacht have never had an answer for it all year. Why is it still a problem, and why has it not been fixed?
God, I mean, it's a tough question. I think we keep trying to kind of plug holes in it, and I mean it probably was never that bad. But we had a couple of games in a row where teams got easy tries from us by turning that angle of the attack after setting them all, which is kind of, we and Sam were talking about yesterday, it's kind of vaguely legal / illegal depending on how you do it. Like they did start to call it a bit in the Six Nations. But see, once you get a reputation for something like that, everyone, attacked our maul and really saw it as an opportunity, really got go for it on it. The more shocking thing for me is that we've never tried a different way of defending it. It's always pack in and lock your feet and try and hold them, force them to use it. Like, I don't understand why. Okay, first of all, you can sack the jumper when he hits the ground. Okay, it's a really difficult skill to do, but it's something that maybe we should be exploring. And the glaring one to me, if everyone thinks that they're going to maul over you, stand off the maul, force them all offside, run around and tackle the man at the back who has the ball. Like, you could actually troll teams this way by letting them think that they're going to maul over you and then shutting them down at the base.
Did you see the standoff in the Super Rugby AU at the weekend where a team did the standing off the maul thing and the other team committed to the maul and the two teams were standing there for about 20 seconds?
I like it.
Just started walking with the maul. Yeah, and another one, Westy, that you can probably know a bit better than I will in terms of the tactics and defending that within that 5, but against Munster, what we did effectively, instead of even trying to combat them all, we just threw lads up. And if it's going to be a guaranteed try, if they get ball to hand and into that maul, why don't we just try and disrupt it instead? Because, like, you know, I think it's at the moment with our ability to defend against them all, it's probably less of a risk to just try and disrupt it, get two lads up and just try and get hand on, or force them to drop it down and then have to play with the ball instead of, you know, looking like we're aiming to defend against the maul and not being able to.
Yeah, it's one of those things as well. You know, like the commentators saying our lineouts were bad all year. Our lineouts were fantastic against Munster. We turned out 7 lineouts we stole from them. We just didn't seem interested, or at least as interested in that against Leicester. You know, it was, you know, we were almost defeated before we went up in the lineout. It is kind of shocking that our lineout was such a good defensive weapon against, I'm going to say, a far superior team than Leicester. I don't mean to offend anybody. But again, against Leicester, we just weren't able to get it. I mean, there's obviously a reason, right? There's a reason. We obviously examined the Leicester lineout and saw they were going to do something. Maybe it was deemed that their maul or their go forward maul was so strong. It is a weapon of theirs that we thought it was probably better off to not hedge your bets and stay on the ground. But as I say, if it's a team, it's a tactic that works for us against a far superior team. Why didn't we see any of it even? You know, especially, you know, when we're that far behind to start doing it, because what do we have to lose at that point?
Yeah, I think that's been a theme of the year as well. Is trying the same things over and over again, and not trying something different, or throwing something different at a problem. And we'll get into that because that's kind of comes up in the questions that I asked for. Defense in general, again, like as I said, 89 points conceded over the last 2 games is just way too much. Because I actually looked back at the previous games before that, and there were we conceded very little. You know, always in the teens kind of range. To then go concede 40 against Scarlets and 48 against Leicester is a bit weird. Pillar defense. This was both teams. Westy again. Pillar defense, which is a very basic skill in rugby. There was several opportunities for players just to pick and go at the base of the ruck and make serious yardages at the weekend. Like, does that come down to missing leaders like Jared Butler and Bundyaki, or is that just how does that happen in a professional team?
Well, yeah, I mean, we scored, I think, was it 2 very, very nice tries off of it. I think as far as Leicester are concerned, they were looking at us spreading the ball wide. They'd obviously done their homework on how we attack, because they weren't even committing men to the breakdown. They were getting out of there as quick as possible and fanning out. They were almost they were leaving gaps next to the maul, or next to the ruck rather, in the expectation that we were going to go wide anyway. And one of the great things, you know, one of the positives we can look at is we identified that pretty quickly. Well, not quickly enough, but we obviously identified that at halftime. We're told, like, they're not pillaring, pick and go through them. But as regards why we weren't doing it, I think, yeah, maybe it is a bit of leadership. Maybe it's, like, I think Paul Boyle seems to be a pretty effective captain in a lot of ways, but maybe you are missing that bit more experience in the forwards, a bit of an older head who's going to be like, this is day one of rugby. Like, you know, pillar 1, pillar 2, like, I'm pillar 1, I've got first ball carrier. Like, but again, maybe by the fact that they weren't committing to the rucks, we were trying to mirror that and be like, oh, well, if they're not committing to the rucks, we won't commit. We'll fan out and get ready to defend. But as you know, both sides picked up on it pretty well and were able to capitalize from men not guarding the rucks.
Yeah, that is true. But defense, the next one then, is.
Well, just say, before you go onto that, I know the defense, like the 90 points in 2 games is not good enough. But I will caveat that, and I was having a conversation with someone about this yesterday. The 2 tries they scored against the 14, which is obviously not good enough, but both of them were completely opportunistic. One was a full length of the pitch run after Carty pulls out of catching a ball, and that's just a bounce of a ball. And the other was just an extremely unlucky John Porch missed a catch, and it managed to straight go to hand and catch everyone by surprise. And then the week before against Scarlets, we spoke about this. That was a makeshift team that definitely had eyes on this game. So I don't know that, like, not winning this game doesn't really do that any justice. But I think that the 90 points it's not reflective of the actual defensive structures that have been there all season that have been quite good. Yes, we have 1 or 2 missed tackles, which are individual errors, but I don't think there's a system problem there. Because I have heard that it leveled at, you know, people saying, oh, well, how is Wilkins coming in as the attack coach when our defense has been so weak, which I don't agree with. I think that 1 or 2 missed tackles by individual players is not our defensive coach's issue. That's an individual issue.
Yeah, Wes, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think our defensive systems have been pretty strong in a lot of regards throughout the season. I think our kind of scramble defense has been good. Our goal line defense has been really good. You hit the nail on the head there, Smurf Minsko. Like we rarely conceded more than 15 or 20 points in games before that. Like, all you have to do is look at the table. We won and lost the exact same amount of games as Scarlets, yet we ended up with an extra 8 or 9 points. Like, our defense has been pretty strong. Okay, like with the exception of our line-out defense, or not line defense, but our maul defense. And there's been a few glaring errors. We've conceded some awful tries, like, don't get me wrong, but it does seem to be more like lapses in concentration or silly things like you said about, like, all of a sudden, like, they're spreading wide, so our pillars are drifting off the ruck completely and leaving massive gaps. So I don't think it's necessarily a systems thing. I think it is individuals with lapses in concentration, as Sam said.
Yeah, the next
more
one
phases
then,
of the game where we lapse in concentration. I'm not saying one person's to blame every time, but
mental lapses more than anything else. Yeah. The next one then is, it came from, as you said, Sam, the 2 tries in that 10-minute period, not being able to take advantage when the opposition team has a yellow. Like, that's been a thing throughout the season as well. Like, we seem to play worse when we have, the team down to 14 men. I don't know what the average, the points conceded is, but we seem to concede nearly more than we scored during those 10 minutes. Where does that come from, Sam? Is that, again, mental lapses? Is it just a team thing? So they're down to 14 men now. We don't have to concentrate as much. Like, where does that come from?
I definitely think that there is a foot off the gas, kind of trying too hard almost to capitalize overly on it. I think at the weekend, and it happened before in other games, we've talked about it, when they went down to their 14 men, the smart thing to do was to get the 3 points, get the ball back with 9 more minutes. Instead of going to the corner, wasting 2 minutes, Jack Carty pulling out a catch and a pass, and then running the pitch and scoring. I know that's hindsight, but at the time before it was said, I was screaming, take the points, take the points. You have to take all of the points available when you're playing against 14, not just the tries. And that's where we falter and where other rugby teams falter. You've seen it across the board in the league with bad decision-making against 14. People wasting 3 or 4 minutes of a yellow card on scrums or on lineouts where they could just be getting the scoreboard taken over, because if you're playing against 14, it's inevitable that they will be doing scramble defense to try and keep themselves from conceding, and that will lead to more penalties, more opportunities. So I think that was so strange not to go for the 3 points. I get when you're in the ascendancy trying to capitalize on it, but I think 3 points there, getting the ball back with 9 minutes to go, would have been more of a statement and would have been more helpful. And then it is just unlucky, and it is, I'm going to keep saying it and saying it and saying it. We conceded 14 against 14, but both of the tries weren't massively glaring, obvious problems with the team. One was Carty pulled out a catch from the ball, and whether or not Carty was fully right in after he got absolutely rocked within the first 5 minutes is another question. And the other was just John Porch, who also got rocked and whose head might have been gone, missed a catch, and they capitalized on it. So I think what we need to do is have a better plan, better system, and more decision making. Maybe more leadership needs to be, like someone like Carty needs to say, no, we're taking the 3. But I don't know, it seemed like there was kind of a lack of communication or a lack of decision making there.
Taking the 3 then, in the red, in the 40, we kind of talked about this in the WhatsApp group as well. At the time, I didn't like it just because when it comes to those decisions, I always try and imagine, if I was the opposition team, what would I want you to do? And if I was Leicester there, I would have wanted Con to take the 3 points and go into half-time into the dressing rooms. And that's why I didn't like the decision at the time. I can see the other side of the story of, at that stage, Connacht had been knocking on the door for probably 5 minutes, and they were getting knocked back by Leicester's physicality. Get the 3 points. The ref did say the next, penalty is going to be yellow, which was a lie.
6 more.
His nose grew like Pinocchio after he said that. That was not enforced. So I see the logic of, lads are tired, let's take the 3 points, get in, and then if they do concede a penalty in the first few minutes of the second half, it should be yellow anyway. So I see that logic, but at the same time, as I said, if I'm a Leicester player there, I'm delighted that Connacht took the 3 points. Westy, do you agree with that sentiment, or do you think that they were right to take 3 points and go into the dressing rooms?
I don't know how delighted they'd be just taking the 3 points. I mean, their defense was pretty comprehensively holding us out. We didn't look in danger of scoring a try in the build up to that. Let's say in the first penalty or the second penalty, we didn't look like we were going to score necessarily. I think us taking the 3 points really lets them off in terms of the warning. Now, look, I kind of said this the other day as well, but like they were down to 14 men and they scored 2 tries. So like I'm not saying like one extra yellow card would have won us the game, but at the same time, if we had at least, I'd almost sacrifice that 3 points for the chance to get them down to 14 men again, so we can come back from half time with a bit of vigor and try and build our points up that way. So I just think it's bizarre to take the penalty the first couple of times, and then when they finally get that verbal warning, you're going to go, oh, now we'll take the points. And by the start of the second half, like they're down below a verbal warning again. It's going to be another verbal warning before they get a card. So I think
That's not right though. That's not how verbal warnings should
Oh,
be.
but I'm not saying that's the way it works, but that's what happens. Like you kind of, if it's not in the forefront of your mind as a referee, you kind of, not that you forget about it, but it becomes less prevalent after half time, maybe. I don't know.
think that was like, and I know I do end up giving out about refs on the show, and I don't like doing it, but I do a lot. But that was disgraceful. Like Paul Boyle made him aware after 3 in the second half that he said before halftime that the next one would be a yellow. And they got 3 more. They didn't get a yellow card. We got the next yellow card, which I know it was definitely a yellow card. And was
I jokingly tweeted that at the time, being like, the next yellow card is going to be for Connacht, like jokingly, and it actually happened. It happened at the end of the game.
I'm saying this the same way. I agree with Westy. We might not have done very well against 14 because history shows we don't tend to play very well against 14. But what it did was it allowed them to continue with the behaviors, to continue with the cynical play, continue with the defending, continue with being offside, slowing down the rooks, because they weren't appropriately punished. So the behaviors continued. And that's why I think the yellow card should have been given, not because you want to play against 14, but because we're sitting there waiting to see them being appropriately punished. And people are saying, oh, you had no go forward, or, we were knocking on the door and nothing was coming. But nothing was coming because they were being constantly illegal. It wasn't nothing was coming because we weren't good enough. If they stop being illegal, we can get some go forward ball, we can get some momentum, get the ball in hand. But that was just completely hindered. I taken the 3 there at the time. I thought it was a bad idea. Then we got back into the game and went, okay, it was a good idea. But, I think that, to me, we said it earlier, Marmion was a little bit injured. Maybe the lads were just bollocks and they were saying, what, we have to go in, we have to get the 3 points. If we come away with nothing here, that's even worse. So it was probably just a regrouping opportunity, which is unfortunate, but you have to live with that. And it did nearly pay off.
Yeah, no, true. We'll get into the questions because this is going to be a Connacht heavy podcast. We're going to get into the questions. First one is in from Aidan McCabe. He kind of said, where are we now after that season? So a lot of positives, obviously, but also the way they finished the season was the last couple of weeks have been rough for Connacht. Those 2 games where they picked experimental sides, kind of, it worked in a sense of you got some great game time for the youngsters, but at the same time, your prep going into a big European game wasn't obviously ideal. So, Westy, what do you think when you look back on the season? What comes to mind?
It kind of comes, I suppose, it comes as a bit of an opportunity wasted to me. I think. We did manage a lot of games really well. A lot of games we were in up until the last minute. I think, after the kind of disappointment of the Edinburgh and the Scarlets game, I was really banking on, on the Challenge Cup. I kind of thought like semi-final, final, losing the final to Ulster, I'm okay with that. If it's a good game, if we fire a couple of shots. But I think, unfortunately, we're going to end on a pretty sour note. Like, even I've said it before, and I don't mean to be pessimistic about it, but going into the Rainbow Cup, like, we have to play the other 3 Irish provinces. We have to play the South African teams now. I think we played 2 other games. Like, we could finish below Zebre in this competition, like in the standings, because it's not a it's not a fully structured league. I know it's only an exhibition competition. I know it doesn't matter, but it kind of just it'll further the cause of kind of ending the season on a bit of a sour note. It's a great opportunity to play some great rugby, and I think we will take a couple of scalps from the South Africans, but I think I'm disappointed, but I'm disappointed because we played so well in so many games. Again, I said it a few weeks ago, like, I feel kind of really lucky as a Connacht fan to be in a position that I can now say a 50% winning season where we came second in our conference is a disappointment. I honestly, it wasn't too long ago beating a Welsh team that other than Dragons was an achievement, or getting a 1-point victory against Dragons in the sports ground was an achievement. So, like, I'm disappointed, but I do see the potential. I think, unfortunately, and I think this might lead to one of the questions we have later on, if next season isn't an improvement again, we might have to start seeing a bit more of a cutthroat side from Andy Friend and the staff. Like some of those players, some of the players that I love and really respect as players, they might be playing their last season for Connacht if we don't push on it, if we were not that bit more well-rounded. Because as you guys said, like maybe that lapse in concentration or lapse in the systems kind of comes from a lack of experience, a lack of leadership. And we've had massive turnover this year. I'm sorry, I know I'm rambling. I've been going off like 10 minutes now. But we've had massive turnover this year. We had a load of players in. It's been a really tough year for a team to get to know each other. Even on the pitch, but even off the pitch and after games and stuff like that. So I do think there's a lot to be done, and hopefully another year. If we have maintained the bulk of the squad, which is fantastic. So I think everything. It looks like we've paved the way for a really good 21-22. But I also think now we're on a bit of a knife's edge where if it does start to go bad, yeah, we could see, it could get very bad in a lot of ways, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I agree with a lot of what you said. Sam, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think the season, it's a disappointing finish, a good season. I think that the it being Andy Friend's third season and third winning season, or third non-losing season, sorry, so it was 50-50. I think is brilliant for the province. It's the best we've done in recent history, in the history of the league. If there was a semi-final, it would definitely feel a bit better, even though we finished in the same position. I just think that, the fact that it was only a final is quite demoralizing, because you do come second, and Dan McFarland and Andy Friend have both said the same thing. And that you can't forget that, we've played very well, like Wesley said earlier. We've gotten losing bonus points where we used to get hockeyed, and that has allowed us to come second in the conference. The Rainbow Cup is going to be an interesting one because we have such a hard kind of draw of it, and I think it is worth taking seriously. There's a lot of potential game time for a lot of good young players. And like Wesley said, I think that going into next year, there might be a change in the guard. You can see that front row, like, Heffernan to an extent, because Tom McCartney was there for so long, but Beelum and Buckley have a lot of caps. They have over 150, 160 caps each. I think Buckley's nearly on 200 this week. But you've got Ainger, you've got Duggan, you've got Robson McCoy, you've got Dylan Tierney-Martin, you've got Delahunt, all very capable. And I think that there might be an opportunity. If you'd said to me 2-3 years ago, Tiernan O'Halloran wouldn't be your full back, I would laugh in your face. But now John Porch has taken that position and made it his own. So I think that there is going to be an opportunity for a bit of a change and integration of a lot of these newer lads who, like Wesley said, we had 7 or 8 new people come in this season, and to get the ball rolling the way they did is impressive in such trying times, in terms of like getting your cohesion right and stuff like that. So I'm excited to see where we go. A little bit down about the last few weeks, hoping that the Rainbow Cup is a bit of a change on that. But I'm still optimistic about this team. I rate it very highly, and I think that the use of like Sullivan and O'Brien and Dylan Tierney-Martin, Niall Murray, like Oisin Dowell and Gavin Thornbury, they've a lot of players have stepped up this year and shown their potential, and now just harnessing that and using that. I think that there's a lot to look forward to.
Yeah, no, that's well said, boys. Next, I'm big, yeah, sign Big Papa. Aidan McCabe also added to that. Any rumors on new signings? I have heard nothing or seen nothing on Twitter. I don't know if these lads have.
No, I haven't heard anything recently. There was kind of rumblings about a potential 10 coming in from Leinster, Leinster or Munster.
Johnson, was it?
It will most likely be an academy product, if anything. So I don't think it'll be anyone to push Jack Carty, which, I like Connor Fitz a lot, and I think he's got a lot of potential. But I do think you really need like viable competition for Carty, especially if we do have the hope of Carty getting back into an Ireland squad at any point. Like, it does pain me to say it, but we haven't replaced AJ McGinty, and I love Jack Carty, and I think he's brilliant. I think having AJ and Jack Carty in the same squad, playing off each other and pushing each other, would be the best way to go. McGinty had an absolute stormer again at the weekend. He is forever on Twitter timelines reminding me of what we've lost. But I think you need a viable 10 to actually push Carty and to get the best out of both, because at the moment he's very firmly the first choice, and Fitzy is good. He's got a lot of potential, but he's not necessarily there yet. If you bring in another academy product, you got rid of Luke Carty last year, who's just as good an academy prospect as any of these people. So what would be the point? I think that we do need to look at and it might sound like recency bias because he was playing at the weekend, but Johnny McPhillips is an Irish qualified player, left Ulster last year for more game time, played very well. He's not played too many times this year for Leicester, but he's just one of a number of Irish qualified 10s around that you could look to.
Yeah, and it's always good to have competition for places. At the moment, Jack Carthy isn't too worried about Conor Fitz taking his place, I don't think. And that's not going to lead to, Jack hadn't a great game at the weekend. I'm sure he knows that. Everyone knows that. And they're the games.
He looked all right for the first 5 minutes, and then he got completely rocked by Jasper Weiss. He couldn't get up, and then when he did get up, it wasn't the same. But that first thing he did was a little behind the back pass of Marmion. And I was rubbing my hands together going, this is Jack Carty's day now. And then I think getting absolutely destroyed by that bulldozer of a man didn't help.
Yeah, well, another question was from Aidan and also from Fionn, sort of asking how big of a loss is losing the two coaches of Jimmy Duffy and Nigel Carlin. How big of an impact is that going to have on the team, Westy?
Yeah, I think it's a big impact. He obviously spoke to Jimmy Duffy. He's a great guy. He's been with Connacht. He's a long time servant to the club. Nigel Carlin as well. Sam made the point yesterday. A lot of these guys have been under Sam Carlin Nigel Carlin since they were 18. He was Ireland underage coach and all that. I think it's a huge loss. You love to see these kind of guys come up to the Connacht system. As much as I see players come up to Connacht, I love to see coaches who come up through Connacht who were kind of local minded guys. I do think there's a silver lining in it as well. I think a little bit of new blood in the coaching panel might help to reinvigorate. Listen to Andy Friend's voice, or the same voices now for the last 3 years or more in some cases. I think if we did some clever recruiting, hopefully Andy Friend has somebody in mind, maybe somebody he knows from before to get in. If we did some clever recruiting and got somebody in, it doesn't have to be the same as a Lancaster or a Stephen Larkham or a Roundtree or
professional international coaches being brought in, but
yeah, it doesn't have to be that quality. But if we get somebody with who's been around a bit, who's been in a few different teams, who can give us that bit of a new perspective and kind of push guys and get another bit of a fire on them. I think changes in voices is always, well, not always good, but it can always bring somewhat benefit. If you hear the same thing in the same voice for 3 years, hearing a new voice say it might kind of finally make it stick, so it's a big loss, but I think it's a huge opportunity. I think we won't know how big a loss it is until we get somebody that we know who's replacing them fully.
Yeah. I think that's a good point to make. Even, it's nothing against the two boys leaving, but as you said, we see this, Sam, we see it in soccer all the time. New coach comes into a team that's struggling and they win the first 2 games just because it gives a boost sometimes, even if it's nothing to do with the coach just left. Sam, on the same kind of note of coaches, Cathal Gilmore asked, is coaching or is the promotion of coaches from within the right one at this stage of this team's development? Given our ability to develop technically excellent packs, why can't we create any bad bastard forwards like Leicester? I think he means Jasper there. So do you think, because we didn't know at the time when the two boys were leaving if Friendly was going to bring in maybe coaches that he knew or coaches from externally, so promoting from within and the academy, do you think that's the right thing to do right now?
I'm going to back it, definitely. I'm not definitely sure if it's the right thing to do, but I'm going to back it because Andy Friend, he told you, the two of you interviewed him a couple of weeks ago just after he signed his new deal. And he said one of the reasons that he signed he was delayed in signing was he's waiting for financial reassurance. And I'm sure that, his input into who's on his coaching team is definitely something that he wants and will have. And he's been part of the selecting process. So he will have seen Peter Wilkins and decided that he wants that move from the defense to the attack. So like he's made those decisions. I don't agree with a lot of people who say, you need entirely new voices. I think new voices are great and I think that they're very important, but I do think that moving people around can change the voices, even if they're familiar people. Like, Peter Wilkins knows how to talk to these players because he's coached them, but his attacking ideas might be different to Nigel Carlin's attacking ideas, and that is still a new voice. So I think that you still get that benefit of new coaches. If you change it up, you reshuffle, you keep people on their toes, it keeps it fresh. And I think that, hiring from within, you're more likely to get someone that Andy Friend fully trusts if he's been working alongside him for the guts of 3 years, and he knows that he trusts these people and he can see it. Because, Andy Friend might have a lot of very, very able coaches that he's fully worked with before or aware of and would like to get, but they're on the other side of the world. And in the current climate and in any climate, bringing forwards coaches from Australia might not be beneficial to you or to them. It's a big financial outlay. It's a big move in someone's life. So bringing someone through from within that you know and can trust is a good thing. So I'm gonna back it. I'm gonna hope that it works out. I really do. I am positive about it. I listened to an interview with Peter Wilkins last week, and I found he came across very well. And he was a very highly rated coach, and he was a skills coach in the past with the Reds in Australia. So I don't see why it wouldn't work. And Matty Lawler coming through, being promoted. I think that hoping anyway that it's a good thing.
How about, hear me out, a coach that knows Andy Friend and could be out of a job soon, Eddie Jones. Who says no?
Imagine Eddie Jones as our forwards coach. Oh my God.
And we'd love him too. He'd be that, because he's an asshole, but when he's your asshole, it's totally different.
Spitballing on ideas for forwards coach. It's probably not going to happen now that he's been promoted from just a line-out coach to defence and line-out. But I think Jerry Flannery, being an ex-player, being from Limerick, so it's not too far a commute, being an ex-forwards coach, the likes of might want to get something over Munster, because I'm not sure he was overly happy with how he was let go as a coach from there. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I know that he wasn't, he turned down the contract that was offered to him. So I thought he would have been ideal, but I read during the week that he's signed a new, or he's improved his position in Harlequins. Maybe not signed a new contract, but he's been improved to, or promoted to defence coach. But himself or Muldoon or O'Connell, I think, are the three that people are kind of going, ooh, that could be worth taking a shot. But no,
you're getting O'Connell, I don't think.
Well, like O'Connell is like, he's a set piece coach with the national team. If he wanted to further his skill set and go in somewhere and become the out and out forwards coach, I don't necessarily think that would be a bad idea. I don't think it'll happen, but I was spitballing ideas, and I think that could be potential.
Yeah, definitely. Cheers, Colin, for the question. We'll move on to Aina, who sent in a few questions, some good ones, and one of my favourite ones, which we'll get to. But the first one was, you can bring in any one current Super Rugby Aotearoa player to Connacht to plug in, and what you feel is our biggest issue. Who is it and why? And this is a good one, because you could bring in the likes of, say, with Jordie Barrett, but that's not our problem. That's not where Connacht are lacking. So, Sam, I'm sure you have about 15 players you want to bring over. But
nope, I have one. I've thought about this way before this question was ever asked. The ideal player for Connacht is Artie Savia. He's big, bruising, ball-playing forward, the captain of a team, plays number 8, a position where we might be slightly too light. He is perfect for us, and I think would suit both styles of our play and covering that need of what that thing that we need, which is just a bit of bulk as well in the forward. So I don't think that there's a better answer than Artie Savia. And he's
Westy.
Dalton Papali.
Oh, I like it. Explain.
He'd be cheaper. He'd be cheaper than Artie Savia.
A lot cheaper than Artie Savia.
He's a turnover machine. He is.
So is Artie.
However much the Blues, have been spotty in the last couple of games, he's been consistently fantastic. And I think that kind of a head down, work rate oriented player is kind of what Connacht need, what the lads that kind of get up behind. He's going to be like, Artie Savia is a very similar player, and Artie Savia is arguably better than him, but we've better chance of getting Dalton Papali. That's an achievable goal.
Yeah, and Connacht don't want to bring over that losing attitude and mentality that Artie Savia has at the moment, only having one game out of 5. You know what I mean? That's a bad funk to be bringing over.
Everything that Westy said about Dalton Papali, I think, is more applicable to Artie Savia. So I don't think, the only thing that I think that Westy has going for him with the Dalton Papali over Artie Savia is the fact that he's only like 23 and you get 10 years out of him, which is mental to think that monster is only 23. But
Dalton Papali, does he have the dummy pass in his locker? Do you know what I mean? Artie's going to be throwing boys off.
Yeah. Oh, imagine it. Imagine the big...
What about, I've been thinking as well, I was thinking more leadership kind of experience, but if you got Sam Kane for a year or two, just to sort of, you know what I mean? Like, there'd be no pillars missed if Sam Kane's back there. Interesting, we all went for the very similar positions in the back row. So that's obviously where we think the weaknesses are.
Where we need a position. It's an interesting question, not because any of these players will come to Connacht.
Don't say that, Sam. Come on.
But it is an interesting question because we've made some really astute signings in the last few years. But one thing that we haven't had really is a marquee signing, like a Dan Parks, or like, I know it didn't work out, but a Mills Muliaina. even when he brought in Martins Boshoff was a South African international a couple of times, and Kobe Fainga had 1 or 2 caps, and Jared Butler probably the last big marquee signing. So I do think that there is one due. I don't think we'll get it because of the financial climate at the moment, but I do think that, you know, getting a big name, maybe coming to the end of his career, retiring a Connacht sort of thing, is kind of overdue, and getting the experience head in would be brilliant. And if it could be Artie Save, I'd be happy out.
Yeah, well, I've seen Cody Taylor being thrown around a lot, which again I think it's brilliant, but I don't think he's going to fix the issues with Connacht. He'll add a lot of tries, but will he stop the tries going in? I don't know. I'd love to see it happen, but I don't think so. That was a good question.
You're getting in the way of the Della Hunt, Dylan
Yeah.
Martin, and
Yeah, because we definitely wouldn't do that in a heartbeat if it was actually possible.
We have athletic head case hookers already.
You don't have the best athletic head case of them all in Cody Taylor.
Dane Coles.
Nah, fuck Dane Coles. I don't like Dane Coles. He can stay. The next question is the best question, because I think it's a really good topic to discuss around Connacht, because as Westy has kind of alluded to, it's great that Connacht fans can look at that season and be disappointed, because as you said, Westy, years ago, that is like a fantastic season. To finish second, 50% win rate. You know what I mean? It was a good season overall. But Ian, I did ask, is it time to start thinking more past, you know, overall it was a good season, and actually start to look to be for better season finishes? A bit more rootless, I think, Westy, was what you were kind of saying. Whereas, you know, Connacht has that, you know, oh, it's the fourth province, you know, they're happy to be there sometimes. They're great lads. They always put in an effort. Is it time to start looking past that, Westy, or is it too harsh? Is it too soon to do that?
No, I think you have to measure it. I think we should start thinking like that, because we do, you know, we've always thought of ourselves as an equal party at the table, whereas nobody else has ever agreed with us. So I think it is. I think, you know, it kind of feeds into what I was saying. I think we're in a luxury position where we're able to ask for more now from Connacht. We're able to expect more from them. I think we kind of have to respect the past a bit and be like, look, this is, you know, look, I know we won the thing in 2016, but the following year we had one of our worst years in it. So if you want to look at consistent growth, this is the best time. For Andy's first year, we were third in our conference. Okay, last year we were fourth when the season was cancelled. So, you know, we can say third or fourth there. You know, I won't argue with anybody. And second this year. So I think we have to kind of respect the past and put it in perspective and say, well, look, we've progressed a lot in the last 3 years. Really, we're getting, you know, we're consistently now getting the top of the table. But yes, we should be pushing for more. We should be saying, well, the games we lost were really winnable. How come we lost those games? You know, we didn't have a big score put against us until the Scarlets game. And then, you know, okay, we had a big score put against us in Leicester, but we also almost managed a fantastic comeback in that game. So I've forgotten what the key point of Ian's question was. Yeah, it is, I think next season now, if next season we see a dip, we have to start getting a bit more ruthless. That was the point I was making about, you know, we could see maybe older heads go, or, you know, newer players who we think are great talents not being renewed because they had their 2 years and it didn't work, and goodbye. Do you know?
Yeah. Sam, this question, when I saw this question, I thought of you, because you are the ever optimist, and, you know, you always, you know, you love Connacht, and that's understandable. And then I think sometimes, though, you don't criticize them like you would other teams because it's Connacht. So what do you think when you hear Ian's question?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, because I think the further down that line you go, and the more you deserve to be further down that line. Like, we came second this year, and, you know, we're saying, like, look where we came from. I think the further away from the look where you came from you go, the less of that being able to harness the chip on your shoulder mentality that we need to be successful. Because I do think we are still under-resourced, underfunded, smaller squad, less player pool to pick from, less of a kind of school system, smaller amount of clubs. All of those things they're things that allow us to have a chip on our shoulder, that allow us to push on and to punch above our weight, and we will continue to punch above our weight. And if that means taking lads from other teams that haven't had their opportunity and punch above their weight, that's a good thing, and that's something to continue to do. You know, I'm looking at the likes of Conor Oliver's name here, Oisin Dowling. These are two players who played really well so far this season. I'm looking forward to seeing more of them. But I do think, yeah, we were 8-8 this year. Arguably could have been 10-6, or even 9-7. Two really poor games towards the end of the season kind of made us feel like we're on the 50% where we should have actually had a winning season. And I think that feeling of being like, oh, you know, we didn't do too well would be gone if there was a semi-final. We would have finished in the exact same position, but it would have been a much bigger mentality boost if we had a day out, a semi-final to play. Even if we got beaten in that by Ulster or by Leinster, whoever it was going to be, that I just think it would have made it seem a little bit more impressive than getting 8-8 and finishing second. It was such a weird season like that. So it is hard to criticize the team because they've done well, but also to feel like, yeah, we are in a position now that we've three non-losing seasons in a row and want to continue that. So I think we have to kind of get a little bit away from the mentality of saying, look where we came from. But I don't think you can forget where you came from or forget the circumstances around the team in terms of the resources that we have, because I think that allows us to play the underdog card, and it's something that Connacht will need to utilize if they want to continuously be competitive, because, you know, everything going against them in terms of resources and size and amount of players and all of those sort of things. Even the weather goes against us as well. Like, we're not very good at playing in our own stadium because the weather doesn't suit us, which is just the most Connacht thing.
Not much we can do about that, unfortunately. Westy, I think it's on that question again. Andy Friend's mentality has to be. I'd love to know what he thinks, because at the end of the day, these kind of games, it all comes back to his feet because he's the head coach, and you know, and we all know how good of a coach he is. So it has to be very frustrating for him for these losses. Is his patience wearing thin, you think, with some of these players or the squad, or again, is it too early? Is it too much of a disrupted year? Is as you say, is next year, then the next year, is that more when he'd be like, okay, look, this is actually something that we really need to address?
Yeah, I think it's mainly on next year. I think it's the last 2 years have been pretty disruptive, a lot of change. I don't personally see his patience wearing thin in him. He's a very calm, very relaxed man, although he does seem to be quite honest at the end of games. He's kind of visibly frustrated, or you know, he's quite honest about how he feels where we died off and lost games. Which is one of the reasons I like him so much. I don't think,
and because he called you Westy as well that one time,
because we're best friends, you know. No, I think next year. I think, as I said earlier, I think next year we might start seeing a little bit more ruthlessness from him. We did see a little bit of ruthlessness from him at the end of last season, but I feel like that was a little bit more enforced by David Nucifora, saying, I've got these players I want to move around, but you have to get rid of some of the guys in your squad. So I think we might see it driven a bit more by Andy Friend. And look, if we have another relatively successful season, that can lead to, you know, we're in the Champions Cup again, so that's a little bit more funding our way from the TV rights. And if we go back to a normal financial structure, and then we have a boost on top of being that little bit more successful, we might see some ruthlessness tied with some really good innovation, some, you know, that big marquee signing that Sam was talking about.
Yeah, and most of the players that re-signed was a 1-year contract, so you do have a lot of flexibility when it comes to contracts next year too. We'll leave Connacht there, lads, because we are nearly 50 minutes in and it's all been Connacht so far. But thanks to everyone who has sent in questions. We really do appreciate it. And if you ever have any questions, send them on to the page, and we will always do our best to address it. We'll run through quickly the rest of the games. Munster-Toulouse. Toulouse coming out on top, 40 points to 33. We kind of finally saw Munster throw the ball around a bit, you know, compared to the final loss against Leinster, where they didn't really fire any shots. This against Toulouse, they did, and it worked for a lot of periods of time. They looked like they scored 33 points against the Toulouse team, which is no easy feat. Westy, were you surprised to see that? Were you expecting more of a cagey, you know, typical Munster?
I don't really know what I was expecting. I always thought they would have had to play like this to beat Toulouse. I mean, you're looking at, you know, a real all-star team of players. Like, I know Jerome Kano's 100 years old now, but like, I don't see him slowing down really. I thought he was brilliant. You know, Dupont and Nentamac, like Kobe on the wing. Like, we know how dangerous they are. We saw how they played against Ulster. They're going to take their opportunities. Was I convinced after the Leinster game that's how Munster were going to play? Probably not. But I know they had that talent in their squad, and I thought for the sake of it, I thought they played fantastic. I mean, I can't remember the exact score in my mind now, but like, that's a one-score game by definition. Like, it might have ended up in a little bit more than that. I know there was a cheeky try at the end to kind of flatter the scoreline a bit, but I do think they were very, very close there. I thought they played it very smart. They took their opportunities. They took risks. It was great to see those risks coming from Murray and from Carberry. It's great to see Earls really kind of getting himself involved again. Another guy, 33, 34 years old, and playing some beautiful rugby. I thought Damien De Allende was phenomenal. I don't think he got anywhere near enough credit because he was running hard lines, he was creating gaps, and he was breaking through and giving great offloads.
His best game for months so far, I'd say, isn't it?
Definitely, yeah. And
Yeah.
I think because they're finally playing a game that maybe suits him that bit better. That slower game against Leinster, he's not really gonna be able to run on those harder lines and create that space as he will in a slightly more free flowing game that they had against Toulouse of the weekend.
Sam, Wesley touched on Carberry. A lot of people are kind of worried about him on Twitter and stuff because he showed sparks in his first few games, but then like he was quiet the other day. I'm not panicking as an Irish fan because it's his, a handful of games back after a long time off. Are you feeling the same, or do you think that something's up?
No, I think if anything, he's ahead of schedule in terms of how much game time he's getting. He was out for 14 months or something, and he's come back and he's played 2 or 3 nearly full games, like little bit parts coming on and stuff. And I think that, for him to be starting games now is brilliant, but it's ahead of schedule. I don't think you can question, or I don't think you can criticize having quiet games like the Leinster one the last day, because you're coming back from that long out, you're going to have that, and that's always going to happen. And anyone that thought it wouldn't is kidding themselves. I think, unfortunately for him, but possibly fortunately for him as well, is he had 2 or 3 really amazing moments in the first game or two back, and everyone went, oh, he's instantly back as good as he can be. And you cannot ask for that. You can't ask for any player that's out for that long to ever be as good as they were before they got injured straight away. I know Furlong did during the Six Nations, but that was a risk, and that paid off in the end. But I think with Carberry, you could be talking about even next season before you start to see him consistently playing to his best. He's going to take a long time, and rehabbing is not easy, and he's still getting back to it.
Yeah, I agree. There's no time to panic. Westy, when I was looking at the game and I was thinking about it, CJ's leaving, Billy Holland's leaving, even the likes of JJ Hanratton is, leaving. O'Mahony's in his last couple of years with the club. You have young players coming through like Craig Casey's. You have Carberry there. We've seen how good Coombs was the weekend. Like, he was absolutely fantastic. Is it now time for Munster maybe to start moving towards that? Is it the ideal time for Munster to start moving towards a more expansive game with a turnover of the kind of the older guys leaving? Because like CJ's it's just not him. It's never going to be him. There was a glaring moment during the game where there was a massive overlap in the wing, and it never came across his mind to pass the ball. It was go into contact, and that's fair enough. That's his game. But we've seen how potent they could be against Toulouse. Like, they did play some lovely stuff. Is now a good time with the turnover to try and do that, or are Munster just going to be Munster?
I think there'll always be a touch of Munster about Munster. I think they will always want to be that kind of physical presence. But yeah, no, I think obviously with, as Sam said, with Carberry's kind of expectedly kind of slow kind of progression back to form, with Casey, who's a lovely, lovely quick scrum half, and with like with Earlsy on the wing, and with Conway, who's a fantastic ball carrier. Mike Haley's had some great moments this season. And with the younger, maybe slightly more dynamic pack, even Finian Wycherley coming in, getting more and more game time. I think it is probably time. Now, they've signed another massive South African second row, so it probably doesn't suggest that they're going to do that. By my count, that's 3 South African second rows in one team now.
And it could have been 4. Oh, no, well, sorry, step to tie, but they nearly had another massive South African.
My argument there is like, okay, I'm all for bring Jenkins in for a season and fill a hole. But I would actually kind of rather have Peter Sefton in my league and watch him play every week than if you're doing it anyway. Neither of them is Irish qualified, so I mean, okay, the question of price comes out. Who's paying for these guys? But why not have? And Sefton would probably help them play a bit more of an expansive game, because South Africa kind of use him as he's a 15th man, but they almost use him as an extra man where he kind of roams and picks his gaps and picks his poaches really well. Anyway, I think it's probably a good time to start moving towards a slightly more expansive game. I think all of the provinces now are probably going to be pushed to offload that little bit more, because the Irish national team has come under so much criticism for not doing it.
Well, the phrase of the weekend was KBA, keep ball alive, after O'Gara's interview, which was, by the way, a fantastic interview. I'm not overly the biggest O'Gara fan, but I could listen to that all day. Sam, worst text of the weekend went to me after I said Antoine Dupont has been quiet. He then proceeded to score 2 tries in 5 minutes. What did you think of Toulouse's performance overall?
Yeah, a little bit slow to get going, and then once they did, they were they were putting on a bit of a masterclass. They're such a wealth of talent. Like even Westy was naming out all the players in the back line, and I was just going, "Oh my God, they're all so good." And then I was also going, "But Pita Aki could have still been at Connacht." And the Aki centre partnership that we didn't get enough of.
100% win rate. Aki, 100% win rate when they were our two centres. They played one game together and we won.
We had at one stage because we had Stacey Illy and Nia Dialokin and Matt Healy. I think there was an Aki Illy Healy Healy backline. I was like, this is the best thing ever. But,
tongue twister for every commentator.
No, they were brilliant, and they're never going to be an easy team to play against. I do think they got a little bit lucky. One of those Dupont tries looked like it could have been questionable. I know they went to TMO and stuff, but I think Munster left enough there for the Munster fans, certain ones on Twitter, to be aggrieved about and to be given out about and saying how it was robbed, because that's what we do as Connacht fans, is we talk about how decisions robbed us.
We didn't mention it too much for Connacht game, which we could have, but we didn't. But poor JJ Hanratton got his ankles broken too. The poor lad. That was unfortunate. But it was such a slow fall to the left. I felt so bad for him, but at least there wasn't a full crowd there to watch it. Toulouse go on, as you said, they're just, their mindset is just, I love their mindset in a lot of ways, because they know they're going to make mistakes, but they're going to click on enough occasions where they're going to score tries. And Intermac was fantastic as well. He's back to his kind of best as well. Unlucky for Munster, they go into now a Rainbow Cup where we were kind of chatting about it earlier on. Do you blood youth, or do you look at that as, you know, it's been 10 years, well documented since Munster won a trophy? Do you look at that as a real opportunity to win a trophy, or do you look at that as let's get, as you said, Westy, the Wycherleys, the Caseys, Carberry, more game time? What would you do, Westy, if you were a Munster, if you were Johan van Graan?
I would probably, and it's kind of wishful thinking in a way, but I would probably back my younger squad for next season. I think I'd probably rotate it a fair bit. CJ is gone, so there is literally a space there to be filled. I'd maybe, pair Wycherley with RG Snyman once he's available and try and start getting them experience. Start Casey, start maybe Healy or Crowley, start giving them a bit of time. Well, again, I mean, it's tricky with Joey Carberry because you want to start giving him as much game time as possible, but you also want to manage him quite well. So maybe start him for one game and have Crowley come off the bench, or start Healy and then have Carberry come off the bench. I would start rotating now for the Rainbow Cup. It's an All Nations Cup, right? It's a Fugazi, it's a Fuguzi, it's a whatever Matthew McConaughey says. It's a made up thing, So look, it's an exhibition for the league itself more than anything else. So I'd probably experiment pretty heavily in it, I think.
It's a made-up league, but if Connacht win it, it's the biggest tournament in the world.
But see, we need to win leagues, We need to start winning shit.
Westy, I agree with you completely. That's what I would do, and that's what the smart person does, because it is an exhibition league. But we are rugby fans and we are fickle. I remember the day before Connacht played Scarlets, everyone talked about how they didn't care about the score because second was already confirmed and we were blooding 7 youngsters. And then we lose.
I never said that.
Everyone goes mental. And that's what happens. Is rugby fans, football fans, whatever they are fickle. And we can go in real clear, cool, calm, collected and say, blood the youngsters, it doesn't matter. And then they get smacked by Leinster week 2 or 3 or whenever they're playing Leinster, because we have to play the other Irish provinces first. And everyone will go nuts. They'll be like, oh, box kicks, rah, rah, and getting angry. So it's the smart thing to do, but it's not viable in professional sport, unfortunately. So I think that a little bit of a mix is probably more along the lines of what's going to happen. Without sounding too Luke Fitzgerald, maybe give CJ just the rest of the year off. And just allow Coombs to really come good, and Chris Cleote and all the rest of them, because they've such an opportunity here, 2 blood youngsters to play against unbelievable talent and come through into next year. But that's you try explaining to CJ how he's not playing against the South African teams.
Well, Sam, didn't know you were a massive racist, but okay, we'll move on from that. You bigot, absolute bigot. We'll move on to Harlequins versus Ulster. Ulster hamming Harlequins. 57 points, 21. When I saw that team sheet announced, that backline, oh my God, it is just incredible. Like, there's no weaknesses in that backline. It was great to see Billy Burns back playing well, because he hasn't played a lot in the last few weeks. apart from those 2 minutes in the end of games for Ireland. So, he should be in top form for that. The question, I think, after this game, Westy, is not so much about the performance, because the performance was fantastic. Quinn's obviously not naming their starting team. Who'd lose to a second string English team at the weekend? That'd be embarrassing. But how much can you read in? How much can we read into this win for Ulster? Because it's obviously easy to be like, oh my God, Ulster are incredible. They can go on and win this now. Well, they obviously can, but are you also kind of a bit wary of the fact that it wasn't the strongest Quinn's team?
Well, yeah. I mean, look, first off, you can only play the opposition that's in front of you. So, you can't go too far by caveat and say, no, it wasn't a strong team. You still have to go out there and win. And they fairly comfortably won. I think maybe if you do want to take that note of it and say, oh, it wasn't such a strong Quinn's team, you want to look at the last 12 months for Ulster. They've only lost to Leinster. So I think it's all about momentum. And I think it's guys like this, I think Marcel Coutier is going to be so invigorated now in the South African team's come over to play. I mean, he's joining them next season, so he's going to want to lay down a marker. I think, again, people like Cooney wants to win trophies. Like they're going to put a mark down. Like, I don't see anybody, apart from maybe the juggernaut of Leicester, who are going to take Ulster down in this competition now. So I think for them, it's about keeping the ship going in the same direction. It's about maintaining form. Players like Mike Lowry playing out of their skin, I think is fantastic to see. As you already said, Billy Burns. And I think the beauty of Ulster is it really is, like, we're name checking a couple of guys here, but it really is a full squad performance. And I think that was really highlighted in the 50 odd points they put on Quinn's. So I think for Ulster, it's more about continuing this winning form that they're in and keeping that winning culture together. This is their competition, really. I don't want to be too over the top of it, but it's their competition to lose now, I think. And
Ulster fans are going to hate you, Westy. They already do, I think, hate you, because you've made some comments in the past few podcasts. But now you're basically saying that if they lose this, it's embarrassing. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying that at all. I think they're in a really strong position, and I think this, again, they can probably even manage this competition pretty well to gear themselves up for a fantastic Rainbow Cup, because they've been pretty close. Well, they haven't been that close in beating Leinster, but that's a scalp they're going to want to try and get for the end of the season.
Yeah, Sam West kind of touching it, but they're away now to Northampton in the semis or quarters. Quarters. But they're going to eye that up as a very winnable game. They shouldn't fear anyone in this competition anymore. They seem to be, you said it before, I think, Sam, but they're the most likely of all the provinces to make that next step to a Leinster type level, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely the most likely to make it. In terms of being competitive with Leinster, maybe not getting to that level, because Leinster is 56 odd professional players this year used. But what they've done is they've made an extremely strong, not necessarily 23, but an extremely strong 26, 27, up to 30. They have a wealth of very good talent, depth at lots of positions. You look at the likes of Albie Matheson comes on, scores a try instantly as soon as he comes on. Brilliant players, and I think that they are the most exciting, the best to watch. And one of the reasons why I think they're the best team in the league to watch is because they play to the strengths of their players, which I don't think other teams necessarily do. We saw Munster playing really well the other day in a way that they haven't played all season, whereas I think the Ulster have played true to Ulster style all season, and it's benefited them. They have Cooney, Burns, Stockdale, Hugh and Balakoon. Like, all these players are playing out of their skin, and that's because they're being allowed to use their abilities and their talents. So I think that they can definitely step up. I personally put them ahead of Munster this year. I think it's unfortunate they were in the same conference as Leinster, because it meant that they couldn't compete with them in the final, but they were level on points, but they had a better points difference than Munster at the end of the league. So, and all year that they were kind of keeping touching distance with Leinster, and other than losing to Leinster, that was a perfect season for them.
Yeah, and I hope they do go on to win. It'd be fantastic, because you said they're great to watch.
Yeah,
so
they're by far the most enjoyable team in the league to watch.
And
I say that as someone who enjoys watching Connacht play. So,
yeah, well, yeah.
Maybe I like the misery.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we'll move on to Super Rugby Aotearoa.
No.
Yeah, Sam. It only gets worse for Sam. But we'll start with the Crusaders Highlanders game. An upset, a shock. Highlanders come out on top against the mighty Crusaders, 33 points to 12. A good, convincing win. I think the big question on everyone's lips, Westy, is, are the Crusaders the new Chiefs? Hashtag Razor out. Hashtag Razor out. It's only fair.
I want to point out that for the first time ever, I actually predicted a result. I said Highlanders are going to win this. I said by 5, but I said they were going to win.
We'll give you that. So we'll give
My
you
boy
that.
Kazuki Himino was the difference. I've been talking this guy up for
That's
months.
true. That's true.
No, I think these guys are kind of the two southern teams. They're kind of the local rivals, I suppose. They're the nearest they kind of have to each other's local rivals. It's usually a pretty good game between them. I think it was a really well managed game by Highlanders. They took all of their opportunities really early on and built a really comfortable lead, and then forced Crusaders to try and chase the game on a day where already that kind of third or fourth pass was restarting to struggle for them. So I think once they got under the pressure of having 10 or 12 or 13 points, however much it was, to catch up on, I think you started to see those creaks and that bit of panic seep in at the Crusaders. And I think they're going to come out in the hockey. I think they're going to have a great weekend now. It's the,
who are they playing this weekend, Westy?
Some bottom of the league, is it? Bottom of the league.
Bottom of the league, yes, scum.
But it's like I think it was a really well managed game by Highlanders, and it's probably put a bit of fear. It's great for a team like that. It's kind of kind of what Connacht did to Leinster. You kind of ground a team in reality for a second. They go, oh right, okay, we do actually have to kind of tighten up our passes a bit and make a little bit smarter decisions.
Yeah, but Sam, before we get to the Hurricanes game, it's good for the competition when the Crusaders lose, isn't it? It keeps it alive now. The Blues are back in it realistically, and Highlanders now are kind of mid-table as well. It's good for the competition.
Yeah, absolutely. And it happened last year or the last season of Super Rugby Arthur as well, where like Crusaders lost to Canes and it opened it up a little bit, but unfortunately there was no final, so it didn't really make too much difference. But now the fact that there's 2 places up for grabs to get into a final and you've shown Crusaders are beatable, that's good for the entire spectacle of the league. What I think happened at the weekend, and Westy touched on it there, is Crusaders have had the ability to get through games without getting out a second gear all year. And then when they were tested, when they were behind, they struggled to get out of second gear because they're not used to doing it. So, it might be unfortunate for the rest of the league that now Crusaders have experienced what it's like to be behind, and we'll go into the training ground this week, work out what to do when it happens again, and never lose again. So it's scary for the potential Hurricanes game next weekend.
Yeah, well, speaking of Hurricanes, the Blues bet them 27-17 at the weekend. Sam, I think we'll let you sort of get the I'm not going to say excuses, but the defending out of the way, and then we'll let West do his gloating. But talk us through it, Sam.
Yeah, it was kind of weird. Like, I didn't think Canes were too bad. I thought we were absolutely shafted with two decisions that happened in a row. One was Karifi made a perfectly good turnover and they gave away a penalty, which was one thing. Then the penalty went to the corner and the maul was moving, but Ardi Save came through the middle and the Blues dove for the line, fell short. Ardi Save got a yellow card and a penalty try, which was kind of the turning point in the entire game, because up until then Blues hadn't really done much. So I was disappointed with that. What was even more disappointing, well, you'll know my regular Saturday routine of going on media blackout until I've seen the game so I don't ruin it for myself. And I was in, and I hadn't been on Twitter, I hadn't been on Instagram, barely looked at the WhatsApp at all, and because sometimes one of ye or myself might ruin it for each other. And I was there and I was watching. I got to about 60 minutes. Kane still had an opportunity to get into it. It was before the last try, which just took it away from us. And my mate Illy, who is from Auckland, he's a big Blues fan, I just saw the little notification come up on WhatsApp and it was like, unlucky oos. And I was like, no, the rest of the game was ruined.
Brilliant. Well done, Illy. Well done, Illy.
Absolutely shafty. It's like perfect timing because Canes were still within touching distance of it and playing well enough, to be honest. And then that happened. So it was unfortunate. I thought there was a few Canes players played better than they have done in the past few weeks. I think Ledger was better at 10. Mappy was a bit quiet. Proctor was good. Karifi was kind of his usual self, getting himself some yellow cards when he wants to. But no, I was happy with it until the score. Really, other than that.
Westy, now you can go.
The reason I wanted Papa Lee over Artie Save is because Artie Save is just a yellow card machine. He's just not worth it.
he's a
blatantly sacking a ball from the side. And a high tackle to boot. That's 100% right. I have no idea how that was a penalty try. How was it a yellow card? You dive for the line and someone tries to hold you up and you get a penalty try. I don't know. But I think it did. I think that kind of put the win behind the Blues a bit and they kind of grew a bit more into the game. We thought my boy Tungafasi had a great game as well. It's great to see him kind of getting back to form. It's good to see us, I'm a big Paddy Tuipulotu fan. It's good to see the Blues win without him because I think he is really one of the big voices in the team. And I was worried when he wasn't in the starting lineup.
But he looks very slick in his like fancy clothes in the stand, kind of giving a little bit of coaching.
Speaking of looking slick, did you see Caleb Clark's haircut?
Yeah.
I mean,
did.
Man's looking tight.
Speaking of haircuts, we didn't even mention Gavin Thornbury's mullet.
That's the problem, man.
How are you supposed to win games when
the issue.
we're not going to get back into it now? But as I said on Twitter, whoever signed off on that, immediately sacked. That's the rootlessness we need next year, Westy.
I'm hoping there was I hope there was a pay docking there. Like, I know he signed it,
Yeah.
but minus 10%. We're not getting the full Gav Thornbury. We're only getting 90% of him.
Yeah, you've only got Gav Thorn, and then that's it. You're not getting the Uri. Anything else to add of the Blues, Westy? This bye week now at the moment, but now that the Crusaders have lost a game, tails are going to be up.
Yeah, I think the Blues are in a great position now. I think, no offense to Sam, but it's Blues or Highlanders now who look like they're going to take that second spot. I'm kind of liking. I think Arteri Black is kind of growing back into his form a bit. I thought Mark Taleo was fantastic at the weekend. I think maybe Blues have changed now. Again, if I've missed this in other games, I'm sorry, but they seem to have changed up their attack where that other winger is getting far more involved in the middle. It's really creating space and creating some good lines. So I think they're building to something good. I think they'll fire a few more shots now against the Crusaders when they come back again. But I mean, I think it is also the beauty of Chiefs getting 2 wins and all is it is still kind of wide open. Like we don't know for sure who that second team is going to be, and I think it is far more exciting to have a final because anything can happen in a one-off game, as we all know.
Yeah, fact. That's it, boys. We got through an hour and 10. Not too bad for all the Connacht stuff we had to get through, but Connacht fans out there, stay positive. We'll get through it, and if you don't hate Ulster, get behind Ulster for the next few games. But boys, appreciate it as always. Thanks for coming to the therapy session. I hope you feel better for it. Sam, you probably don't because it's just been it's been bad.
Liverpool are playing tonight, and I'm not sure if I can actually bring myself to do it. Playing in the Champions
Real, innit?
He's playing against Real Madrid in the Champions League.
Oh God, okay. Okay. Well, if you
don't
don't hear from Sam tomorrow on Twitter, fear the worst.
The pubs have been closed. The pubs have been closed for a year now, and it's just not in any way helpful.
Yeah, well, exactly. But cheers. But look, we'll do it again next week. We'll recap all the European action. So cheers, boys. Chat to you next week.
Bye.